All right, Steve, my question for you to open up this week's episode. We're recording this on a Monday night, which we never do because you're busy all the time. You're usually doing games and stuff like that. This is the rare occasion where you got a Monday night off. So my question to you is, what do you do on a night off during the season, such as tonight?
Tonight, I'll see who's going to play the Birds in the next round of the NFL playoffs. I'll watch the Vikings and the Rams play, but usually on a night off, it's a lot of laying on the couch doing nothing or
Yeah.
watching a basketball game. I don't get too far away from it.
You just can't stay away. You can't stay away. So I know you broadcast a ton of games. So whenever you actually are watching one of these games, it's carried by the great WHOU. Who's your favorite broadcast tandem to listen to whenever you're watching a WHOU game that you're not calling?
So I got to shout out my boys, Isaac Potter and Ricky Goupel.
Okay.
They're my boys. Love them. They're doing a great job for HOU right now.
There we go. WHOU once again continuing to just bring awesome coverage. I actually tuned into two games last week in WHOU, which we'll get into on this week's episode. And with that, let's start the episode.
You're listening to Northbound, presented by Big Time Hoops. For the North, by the North, Big Time. And now your hosts, Tom Bard and Steve Carmichael.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Northbound, the podcast brought to you by our friends at Katahdin Trust, community banking at its best. Tom Bard, joined by my co-host Steve Carmichael, who, as we mentioned at the top of the show, has a random Monday night off. But it's been a busy last week of basketball. A lot of stuff happened. I went to my first game of the season, which I'm pretty excited about. We'll talk about that a little bit. I tuned into one of your games that you were calling last week for WHOU, which we'll get into that game. And I just want to point out to start the show, I was 2-0 last week with my calls. The Caribou boys and girls did cover the spread for both those games that I predicted. So shout out to my Vikings. I'm making that happen for me. But Steve, busy week for you last week. You've got tonight off. How you feeling? I know you're a little bit under the weather. Is it just too much basketball going on right now? Are you breaking down this early in the season?
Yeah, I pretty much lost my voice over the weekend. So having that extra day off of not recording on Sunday, I think did me a lot of good. I got my tea that trying to help any way I can. I usually don't like to drink tea, but whatever will bring my voice back because I need it. Tomorrow, I got your Fort Kent Warriors. Tuesday, Wednesday, they're playing the Vikings.
We need some payback because we got smacked, right? Then Caribou smacked 4K when they traveled up home.
Yeah,
so we got to change
smacked
that.
Would be an understatement.
Yeah. So all kinds of big games coming up this week. I feel bad now that you're under the weather because you've been calling so many games, and on your night off, I got you doing an hour-long podcast here.
Sorry. I got a couple text messages today. People expect it on Monday.
Yeah, same here. I got a couple messages today, so here we go. Let's get right into it. The week that was another Caribou kid walking away with the Big East Player of the Week. Tristan Robbins was the Player of the Week for last week. We've talked about him a lot already in the podcast, Steve. But anything you want to add to that, Tristan Robbins? Do you think he's the front runner for Big East Player of the Year? Maybe.
Well, yeah, I think he is. You have to take into consideration like individual talent and all that stuff means a lot. But as far as your team success, and right now, Robbins, it's not just his ability to score the ball. I think what's most impressive is his distribution. I mean, he puts a lot of passes on the money. Now, he's got some great players around him, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But some of the plays that he makes and he sees, you don't see a lot of point guards doing that, let alone a 6'4", 6'5" center.
No.
So to me, he is the front runner for Big East Player of the Year and for the Big East for sure.
All right. Caribou might sweep those awards. It might be a Madeline Dupre, Tristan Robbins, Big East sweep.
It's looking right now.
It's looking right now. College news. The Maine men improved to 2-1 in America East play with a couple wins over the last week. They beat Binghamton last week, 82-71, led by Kellen Tynes, who had a game-high 25 points. Also earned America East Player of the Week honors last week, so shout out to Kellen. AJ Lopez had 21 in that one as well. And then on Saturday, the Black Bears beat Albany 87-66, led by Chris Mantis' 17 points. AJ Lopez and Jaden Clayton also chipping in with 16 in that. Maine improves to 10-8 on the season. So a winning record this far into the season, which is you like to see. They're trending in the right direction. They head to NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. They play on Thursday. I don't know if you follow the Black Bears at all, Steve, but trending in the right direction ever since Coach Mark Wood took over. And like I said, to be above 500 this late in the season, that's a great sign. They're going to finish above 500 for the year, I think, just based on what they have left with conference play.
Yeah, well, it was the first game against Duke. I haven't had a chance to watch Maine other than their first game against Duke because
they played good against Duke.
They did very good.
It wound up being like a 30-point loss, but I was telling folks, I haven't seen many teams look that good in a 30-point loss. They look good.
You know, Coach Markwood has certainly turned the program around, and it's headed in the right direction.
That's what we like to see. Let's see more college news. Husson program swept Salem State over the weekend they beat Salem State, on Saturday, 78-66 behind a name that we all know. Hannah Richards led the way with 18 points. Another name we know, Lily Roy from Wisdom, now at Husson, also had 16 in that one. And then they beat Leslie over the weekend as well, 91-36. That's the sweep that I was talking about. Once again, Lily Roy, 16 points in back-to-back games. So shout out to the freshman from the small town of Santagut, Maine, up there in the county, in the valley.
I'm headed there tomorrow.
And you're there tomorrow. There you go. So shout out to her, playing well. Some more names that we know on the Husson program. McKaylin Porter from Southern Aroostook had 10 points in the win yesterday. And Macy Beals, another name we know that went to Central Aroostook, also had 10 in that game. So Husson improves to 7-9, but they're 5-1 in conference play. That's the biggest part right there. They had a rough non-conference schedule, but playing good at the right time, trending in the right direction. They got a big one this week. They play Colby College in Waterville on Tuesday. So tomorrow night, it's a big one for them. And then last week, the Yumpie men and women swept Leslie. So rough go round for Leslie as they made the trip to Maine. The Maine won 84-64, and then the women won 71-62 behind Lexi Ireland's. That's another name we know. 21 points and 23 rebounds. Quite the performance, which leads us to our next section, big time performances of the week that easily could have been in there. Yeah. But Mary Allen, a name that we've mentioned before already on this year's show with some crazy stat lines. She had another one this week. She set the school record at Central with 44 points. Also had 11 rebounds and 9 steals this week. I don't know if it's a boys record or girls record or the school record, but nonetheless, a record set from Mary Allen. But Steve, we're not surprised at this point. We've seen her put up ridiculous numbers.
She's done it her whole career. She just, I think she's a junior, correct?
Only a junior, yes. So she got a chance to break that record.
It's not going to stop anytime soon.
No, it's just something with these Allens, man. Like they just keep coming. The next one comes, that's the record. Next one comes, breaks the record. Next one comes, breaks the record. So shout out to the Allens. Another name, Kyron Carliglio, had a triple-double this week, 26 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists, and just threw in 7 steals for good measure for Hodgdon as they won 88-64 against a team that I don't want to really name. But Steve, if you want to throw it in there, you can go ahead. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Fort Kent.
They beat Fort Kent. So he just
Kyron's. We had Kyron up in the Rising Stars game.
Yeah, last year. Yeah.
Really, really promising talent for the Hodgdon Hawks. And that's a team that I talked about last week. They were in the 8th seed in Class C. And I said, if they sit there, they're going to be a dangerous 8 seed. Carliglio is just one of a handful of really good players on that team for Coach Henderson. But Carliglio has the talent to do that type of stuff. I mean, he's a good player on the inside. He can step beyond the arc and shoot. He can control the glass. He's a great distributor. I mean, he's a terrific all-around player and just a sophomore.
26-20. You don't really see too many 20-20 games. So that's impressive right there. There's another kid who's pretty good too at basketball. His name's Cooper Flagg. He had 42 points for Duke and set a single game scoring record by a freshman at Duke and in the ACC. So set it on 2 levels with his 42 points in the 86-78 win over Notre Dame. I was unfortunately stuck at work on Saturday when this was going down. I can't even tell you how many text messages I got while the game was going on saying, you got to check out
one from me.
Got one from you. Your boy's killing Notre Dame right now. And I had to tell everyone I'm at work. I'm going to watch it later on. And I did wind up watching it. And Coop just coming alive at the right time right now. So I mentioned the 42 points surpassed Zion Williamson. That's another name you might know. Record of 35 points, which was set in 2019. Became the first player to reach 40 points for Duke in a game since this guy named J.J. Redick back in 2006. So just an incredible stat line, 42 points, made 4 3-pointers in that game, 11 field goals, 17 free throws. I think he only missed 1 or 2 and 7 assists, which matched the career high. So just a super efficient day at the office for Coop and just playing well at the right time. I remember right before New Year's, Steve, I was finally starting to see the chatter online people saying Coop's overrated, shouldn't be the number one pick. I was seeing for the first time negative energy. And since then, he just had back-to-back incredible games and letting everyone know that he's the real deal.
Yeah, well, the internet is filled with idiots. I mean, that's been well established. But my question for you, like during Zion Williamson's tenure at Duke, there was a lot of conversation about, is he like one of the greatest freshmen ever? And they hadn't seen like the end result yet of how they would do in the tournament. And they were comparing him, some of the greatest freshmen ever. At what point, if Cooper continues on this trend of getting just better and better at the college level, at what point, I mean, we don't know the end result, so it's hard to compare him to some of these other freshmen. But at what point do you say, okay, like this guy has a chance to be considered one of the best freshmen to ever play college basketball?
Yeah, I think we're getting to that point, and he's going to be in the running for National Player of the Year at this point too.
Yeah.
Like the other front runner is the guy from Auburn. I forget his name, Broom or something like that, who's injured. He's going to miss significant time. So, I mean, if he keeps trending the way he is, he's going to be in the running for not only Freshman of the Year, but National Freshman of the or National Player of the Year, which only a couple freshmen have done.
Everyone always complain, he doesn't score enough.
Well, here you go.
There's your 42. I mean,
yeah. And it's like I said, it came efficiently, and you're just seeing all of his numbers are getting better and better, just more efficient with each game. So shout out to Coop.
That dunk against Pittsburgh, too.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
He's had an incredible New Year. Ever since New Year's, he's had an incredible New Year.
That guy, he looked like Chet Holmgren, tried to jump with him. And I was like, don't try it.
Yeah. So we finally got our breakout scoring performance, and we finally got our poster. So Coop, thanks for getting that done. And let's just keep on marching towards March Madness here. They do have 2 games this week. They play Miami on Tuesday, and then Boston College, which is kind of a homecoming for Coop, on Saturday.
Yeah.
And Big Time Hoops will be in the building for that. We got 2 media passes for that game. Nice. So I got 2 guys that are going to be there covering that one, so we'll get some content.
There's a lot of people from Aroostook County headed down that way too.
Yeah, so that's going to be a home game for Duke, I have a feeling. Yeah. All right, let's get to our big time games for the past week. So as I mentioned at the top, I went to my first game of the season here, Steve. I went to a big one, Class A battle between Hamden Academy and Brewer. I took my kids. It was my son Braxton's first high school basketball game he's been to. He's a Brewer kid, so I said we need to go catch a Brewer game and get him in the spirit here. And we picked a good one to go to. Hamden Academy knocks off Brewer, gives them their first loss of the year. They built a 14-point lead late in the third quarter, but only for Brewer to go on a 16-2 run to tie the game. Broncos respond with a 9-0 run to put that game away and wind up winning that one. Miles Shane led the way for Hamden Academy with 15 points. Liam Hennigan, who I was really impressed with, 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists for Hamden Academy. On the Brewer side, Owen Fullerton led the way with 14 points. Charlie Bridges chipped in with 11, and Stephen Young's 10. But just a really fun game. So a couple takeaways. One, Brewer's got one of the best home environments that I will say that I've ever been to. Great gym. It's loud. The fans are loud. So really fun environment to go to a game. 2, really well officiated. I will say that the refs let them play. So shout out to the officiating crew, who does not get enough credit, I think, at any point during the season. The refs are usually on the wrong end of things, but I just want to shout them out for their job.
You know who the officials were?
I don't know who the officials were.
You don't know by name?
I don't know them by name. So that's my apology there. But first loss of the year for Brewer, Hamden Academy with the big road wing. I don't know, Steve, if you caught any of that or if you have any input for that game.
I did not catch any of it. I knew you would be there and you could provide some insights. That's a huge win for Hamden.
Yes.
Taking down Brewer like that. How did I say? I don't see Mr. Higgins on the list. Was he a focal point of the Hamden defense?
So they played him physical. He struggled a little bit, but you did see flashes. So there was one play early in the first quarter. Hamden Academy goes to the rack and Ollie pins it against the glass. Right, which is something you don't normally see. Comes down, gets the ball off a little hand off top of the key, goes to the hole, gets bumped, puts up a layup, makes that. So just like you saw little glimpses of what he's going to be. And I think the biggest takeaway for me watching him live, something that you don't normally see in high school basketball is an actual rim protector. Like this kid protects the rim. Yeah. And you could see like the kid who got a shot pin against the glass. Like I don't think he went to the hole again the rest of the game. Like just that type of influence in the game. So Ollie's going to be fine. It wasn't his best game, but you saw the glimpses. But my biggest takeaway is how legit Hamden Academy is. They got a bunch of guys they can throw. Or they only go 6 deep, but all 5 of them can defend. They can switch. They can get up. They can shoot. So I walked away from that game more impressed with Hamden Academy And I just want to give out one shout out to my guy. I'm trying to blank on his name. I'm gonna have to come back to it because I got the wrong name up there. But
For Hamden or
yes, for Hamden. Sawyer Worcester. Sawyer Worcester is now one of my favorite players to go watch. He had a big first quarter and was just carrying himself like he was the best player out there. Just, carrying himself a certain way that I like to see, a little swagger, as the kids say. So shout out to Sawyer, and just a great performance from Hamden Academy to give Brewer their first loss. Brewer, though, on a now 2-game losing streak, so they followed it up with a loss on Saturday to Coney. They dropped that one 68-60. Hamden Academy, fresh off knocking out Brewer, then dropped the game to Messalonsky. Messalonsky wins that one 65-47. So if you look at the standings right now, Messalonsky's actually number 1, Brewer 2, Hamden Academy coming in at 3. So a team we've been talked a lot about. Messalonsky sits there number 1. And I know you've heard from different folks, they're this, they're that. I've heard from somebody who was at that game, the Messalonsky game, they are legit. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, another team, Camden Hills is now over 500.
They are
6-5. They've won, I think, 4 of their last 5. So here come the Windjammers. I told you, don't give up.
Still, it's like we've been saying, it's still early. They just needed to kind of find their groove. And
a lot of new pieces. They got Brewer coming up this week. Brewer and Messalonsky, that's next weekend. But yeah, they'll end the season. They got Brewer, Messalonsky, and Hamden Academy.
No time to rest in Class A.
Right.
You play everybody, and it's every other night, it feels like. So that's where we currently are in Class A North. Let's drop down to Class B. Boys, one game that I tuned in to watch because I had made a prediction, and you were on the call, so I wanted to check that out on WHOU. Caribou Routes, Presque Isle on the rivalry game, 65-28. Steve, you were there. You were on the call. When I tuned in, there was like a couple minutes to go left in the second quarter. I think the score at that point was only like 16-9. And I was expecting to see offense because Caribou was one of the leading scorers in the entire state, right? So I was a little bit worried. I wasn't sure what was going on, but Caribou picked it up in the second half.
Well, it looked like Presque Isle's game plan was try to just slow it down because Caribou, averaged 79 points per game. They're the highest scoring team in the entire state. And they kept it relatively close for a half. And then when they kind of had to put their foot on the pedal, that's when it got away from them. Caribou just played well, too. And I don't think Coach Corrigan was upset being up 14-2 or 16-2 at one point and Presque Isle taking 45 seconds off each possession saying, okay, we're in the lead. You guys have to score. So Caribou can play can play different ways. They can get up and down the floor, but they can also play in the half court as well. Owen Corrigan, even though it says he only had 10 points here, I'm going to tell you right now, this kid, I have, but it's been a while to see a kid who is so disruptive in the backcourt as like a one-man press. Sam Hebert was a great defender for Caribou last year, but Corrigan just seems to have the hands to, like, if you try to cross over, he's reaching in and he's got, they're so active and he can poke it away, leads to, he creates offense from his defense by himself. It's remarkable to watch.
You mentioned he had 10 points. He would have had 12 if he wouldn't have gone up there for the breakaway dunk and missed that one, right? But,
I'm not sure he can dunk it.
I was a little confused if he could actually dunk or what he was thinking on that play.
Well, I will shout him out too. As I said on the broadcast, he did not limp off and pretend he had a knee injury.
Yeah.
Or an ankle injury. He took it and said, my bad, coach. My bad.
Yeah. Tristan Robbins, the name we mentioned at the top, got Big East Player of the Week, had 16 points in that one to lead the way. Came in Sargent with 11. And we mentioned Caribou just putting it away in the second half. They finished on a 25-9 scoring advantage in the fourth to put that one away. So Caribou improved to 8-1. They followed up with another win on Saturday. They took care of business, I believe, on the road against Bucksport, right? 79-37 is how they close out the week. So still sitting atop Class B. Presque Isle did rebound, though. The boys did rebound with a big win over the weekend. They knocked off Herman 39-36. Steve, that's a quality win right there for your Wildcats.
That's a great win. Listen, Presque Isle's won the games. Like they play Old Town once, John Bapps once, and Herman once. They've beaten all of them, and they're going to win a lot of games. And then Holton as well. They beat them the one time they played so far. They play them again this coming Wednesday. Next weekend is the Caribou Ellsworth MDI Presque Isle weekend up in the county. That is huge for all 4 teams. Prescott right now sits in I think the 6th spot in Class B. They were last time I checked. I'm not sure if that's still, it's very clustered. Past Ellsworth and Caribou, you can throw them all in a pile, right in a basket. And then I think Prescott has like the same amount of points from 4th as they are 13th. I mean, it's just that close. So every game has been magnified. But Prescott has picked up some big wins in the one meetings to get all those heel points. And then they get another big week, as I say, with Holton Wednesday and then Orono on Saturday.
Hey, Cruz Castavan hit a free throw that gave the Wildcats the final lead in that one. Also led the way with 13 points for Prescott. 4 3-pointers made in that one. Freshmen. So now both teams are 6-4 at this point. Talk about big performances. Let's talk about big team performances. Let's drop down to Class C. Matawancook. I still can't say it right. That's how Matawancook. They will always be Matawancook for me. They improved to 10-0. They sit atop Class C, but a couple offensive explosive performances. They beat Lee Academy 113-61 earlier in the week. And then they followed that up with a 103-31 victory. And I forgot to jot down who the second one was against.
We can find it pretty quickly here.
Yes, but back-to-back 100 pieces for Matawancook, who, like I said, improved to 10-0. And I don't know, Steve, if you had mentioned them as a team to watch to be a top Class C.
Central.
Okay. So 103-31 over Central.
Yeah, so they were the 9 seed last year, missed out on the postseason, loss in a prelim to Piscataquis. But when we brought up some rising players with McCarthy and Oliver and Weatherby on the inside, I knew they would be contenders. 10-0, I am surprised by that, but a shout out to those boys, the Lynx, getting it done. Just trying to take a look at the rest of their schedule, and I'm not seeing any games where the only thing I look at, they don't play Fort Kent, who's 2. They don't play Hodgson. They don't play Machias. They don't play Mount View. They don't play Madawaska. So like the other top teams in C, they don't play. So it's hard for me to get a gauge on, where they're going to stack up come tournament time. But regardless, I mean, they're 10-0 and they're putting up some big numbers. And trying to see if they even have a single digit game yet on their schedule. Their lowest margin of victory was 9 against George Stevens Academy. The rest of them have been just blowouts.
Rolling right now.
GSA, they play this coming week at home.
That'll be one to watch right there.
Yep.
Staying in Class C, Hodgson had a great week. They had a 3-0 week. They had a road win at Fort Kent, which we talked about at the top. They beat Central Rustic, and then they beat Washburn at home over the weekend. So in the Washburn win, Carliglio once again leading the way with the game high at 20 points. David Tuttle chipped in with 18. Wyatt Oliver with 12, so nice and balanced. Washburn was led by Colt Curtis's 11. The 8-2 Hawks are hosting Van Buren tonight. Washburn slipped to 4-5, and they face Easton tonight as well. But Steve, Hodgson's one of those teams where you mentioned they've won a lot of games, they've beaten a lot of teams, but heel point wise, not where you'd expect them to be, but could be a very dangerous seed come tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak much more, fluently about the Hodgson Hawks just because I know a little bit more about them. They got to the semifinals last year. They didn't really lose anybody. Logan Sherman was huge in the fourth quarter against Central Rustic in that 3-point victory. He really sparked that comeback. That's a name you probably don't hear a ton, but Sherman can really, really shoot it. Tuttle, Carliglio, some other guy, Oliver as well. They're a really talented team. Hodgson, to me, is one of the favorites in C with Matawancook. I like Fort Kent. I like Machias, Mount View, Madawaska. They're 9-0. Getting it done. They beat East Grand tonight, 91-22.
Tonight they won again? That was Madawaska's the next team I wanted to talk about here.
Yep, they played tonight. And did we have a podcast talk about Quinn Pelletier's performance in Marcel?
That's next. That's next. What's where we're going next
right.
here. So let's drop it on down. So yeah, perfect. Man, we're good at this. Mentioned Madawaska still undefeated. They had a big win last week over Central Rustic. They won that one 57-53. With the Central Rustic having a 3-point lead late in the game. The 8th grader, Quinn Pelletier, hits a 3-pointer from the top of the key to tie the game with just seconds left to send it to overtime. The game was tied at 44 at that point. And from that point on, all of Madawaska's points were scored by Quinn Pelletier. Madawaska wins that one 57-53. Pelletier had a game-high 30 points, including the final 20 that his team scored. Jaleel Joseph, who we mentioned a lot on this podcast, another big game for Central Aroostook, finished with 28 in that game. We thought, or you'd mentioned that Jaleel might be out sometime with an injury. He's back. He's okay. Yep. He's playing. But Steve, Madawaska, now 9-0. What can we say? They really legit. Like, I hate to just think about the fact that Madawaska might be a legit contender here.
Yes, 100%.
Oh, yeah. Man, that kills me to say.
You know, Tebow, they're big. I mean, you talk about Quinn, you say he's an 8th grader. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'5". Tebow has size. Yeah. There's a Braden Pelletier who has size as well. Bollier is a strong physical guard. Turner on the inside. Madawaska's legit, and there's no doubt about it. I was on that game, the Pelletier again and Madawaska against Central Aroostook. That was one of the best individual performances in a span of about 15 minutes I think I've seen in my 12 years of broadcasting. I mean,
it's like some LeBron stuff when LeBron scored like 28 straight back in the day.
That link got sent to me after the game. They're like, this is Quinn Pelletier tonight. Yeah. He completely took over. And that, my broadcast partner and I were talking in that situation when they were down by 3. Do you foul? Well, Madawaska only made 1 3-pointer all night up to that point. Yeah. And they dared Quinn to make it. And, well, he did. So you tip your cap off to him, right? You tip your cap. Good job. Yeah. Then he took over in overtime. And you couldn't stop him. And that's really speaks to the talent level that I've repeatedly brought up over the course of this season, is that this kid is unreal.
What were you saying? Like, what was he doing for points? You know, I know he's a physical kid, but how was he getting buckets?
Well, I mean, he's not the only player on Madawaska, right? They have a fairly balanced attack. I mean, Pelletier having the 30 the other night, but I mean, Tebow can score. Bollier had some big games, especially against Hodgson. Braden Pelletier can as well. They're a really balanced team. But Quinn can do it from all 3 levels as an 8th grader. I mean, as you talked about many times, is his ability to look for contact, I think, is the most admirable quality that he has as a basketball player. Is too many kids shy away from contact. Quinn looks for it.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah,
no. I love watching him. I mean, he's just a fun kid to watch, play basketball. And as a broadcaster, I look forward to seeing how he continues to grow. He's like 13 years old.
Do you guys have the Forcat Madawaska game coming up? Are you guys calling that?
I don't. That is on the 21st.
Next week,
I believe. Let me check my schedule, actually. I have Madawaska coming up at the end of the season. I know that. But I have to check my schedule to see if I can maybe go up and broadcast that. Is that in Fort Kent or is it in Madawaska?
I think that one's in Fort Kent. If it's the one that was rescheduled from earlier in the year, it's in Fort Kent.
I'm in the boo that night.
Oh, God. Cancel that. Fort Kent, Madawaska. Come on. Let's get. Speaking of Fort Kent, it wouldn't be a Northbound episode if I didn't show my boys some love here. So they had a nice win last week. They beat Trophy Mode's Southern Aroostook Warriors in the Battle of the Warriors. My Warriors prevail 86-42 to complete the season sweep. Sorry, Trophy. I feel like this is happening more and more. It's a good feeling. I feel like this is becoming a yearly thing now. So shout out to my Warriors. Aiden Jeffers, my little nephew, had 26 points to lead Fort Kent in that one. Tobias Narana added 24 points as well. Made 7 threes, so just knocking it down. Ethan Collier led Southern Aroostook with 21 in that one. But Fort Kent still keeping pace, Steve, amongst the top teams in Class C.
Yeah, Naranjo was out sick in the game against Central Aroostook. We all know what Jeffers can do. I mean, he's proven that this season, but Naranjo is a great shooter of the basketball. And then Finn Kelly, as I talked about off the bench, they got a challenge this week on Wednesday coming up against the Caribou Vikings. But Fort Kent is 100% legit a contender in Class C. And I want to shout out Chad Sear. I mean, he has really built that program into one of the most respected and just a perennial contender in their specific class. He's done just an awesome job. For the Warriors. It's year after year, Fort Kent is right there. And so I just want to, we talk, coaches get a bunch of shit, right? I mean, never ends from fans, parents, media members. I'm one of the media members that likes to shout out coaches that do a great job, and Chad does that 100%.
Let's give Chad some flowers. You're right, though. It's
love. He deserves it.
Yeah, I've been following him ever since we started Big Time Hoops Up, and I feel like we have a player that's really good, and it's like, oh shit, they're gonna fall off next year, but then it's another kid who steps up, whether it's Ethan Daigle or the Jace kid from a while back, and now my nephew Aiden. We're just doing great things. We just got more players coming up.
We brought up Jaleel, but we didn't talk about how he is now my nephew.
I saw that. Yeah. So you've been given the okay to call Jaleel your nephew. Aiden is my nephew. So
Uncle
it's just
Stevie.
good to see our little nephews just doing well up there in the county. I love it. Let's switch it on over to the girls, unless there's anything else you want to touch on the boys' side, Steve, before we switch gears here.
I think I'm good.
All right. So my Class AA tape for the week here. There was a big rivalry game. Hampton Academy, which is an A school, battled AA Bangor in a battle of the, whatever you want to call it, next door rivals, next town over, whatever you want to call it. It is a rivalry game, and Hampton Academy gets the big win, winning that one 37-26. They played a zone defense, which was extremely effective. Just listen to these numbers. They helped Bangor to 7 points in the first half, only 26 overall, and only 23% shooting from the floor. So rough night for the Bangor Rams. Bangor, I do want to mention they were without one of their best players, junior guard Delaney Hoare, who, like I mentioned before, no her dad, no Delaney. So I'm just going to blame this loss on her not being there. I think if she was there, it would have made all the difference. Yep. But nonetheless, shout out to Hampton Academy on getting the win. Caitlin Adams leads the way with 12 points. Aubrey Shaw, 9 points, 10 rebounds. And Grace Labrie, 9 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, and 2 blocks in that one. Hampton Academy extends their winning streak to 3, while also ending Bangor's 3-game winning streak. Both teams currently sit at 7-4. So shout out to Hampton Academy on the big win. But Bangor, come on, let's get back on track here. I thought after that, the big one we just had, who we just beat. We had a big game I'm already forgetting, Steve. These games all blend together, but we had a big
Oxford Hills, was it?
Oxford Hills, the Oxford Hills win. I was hoping we just roll for the rest of the season here, but let's get back on track. In other Class A news, the Lawrence girls still undefeated, still balling. They beat Nokomis 73-34, and then Skowhegan 70-43 in a 2-0 week last week. So they remain undefeated. And just waiting for the big Coney showdown, which is going to be coming up here, I believe at the end of next week. So
January 28th.
So
put that one in your calendar.
Until that happens, I feel like we don't have much to really talk about. And hey, I think it's going to come down to Lawrence and Coney. So they got 2 games coming up here on the back end of the schedule. So we're just waiting for those two big matchups.
Yeah, they're about a week apart, January 28th and February 4th.
Yep. Drop it down to Class B girls in the rivalry game. Caribou girls beat Presque 55-39. They cover my 15-point spread. Shout out to my Vikings for making me look great in my 2-0 week. I couldn't find any numbers on that game, Steve. Any takeaways from the Caribou Presque girls game?
Caribou is, they've got those 2 freshmen that Lily Bell and Quinn Corrigan that do a great job. But Liv Adams was really the story for me. We all kind of knew what Depre was going to do, but Liv Adams has always, to me, been the X factor for the Caribou Vikings, as I spoke about many times. And we discussed in the pregame with my broadcast partner about Prescott has a size advantage. Well, to Liv Adams, that didn't matter. No, she didn't care. She got about 3 offensive rebounds, I think, in the first possession. And she really took it upon herself to give Depre, a second scoring option. She had 14 in the win. So Liv Adams is going to be a real key looking forward for the Caribou Vikings. Got their coach back, Kayla Brown. Shout out to her. She had her baby back on the sidelines now for the Vikings. And then they went down to Foxcroft and steamrolled the Ponies.
44-13. So Caribou improves to 10-1, a top Class Class B. And as we mentioned on previous episodes, probably the favorites to come out of B North, which I don't think we would have thought. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Madeline really came on the scene, and it was like, wow, like Caribou's got a really great player, but doesn't really have the pieces around her. But there's also those teams that were in front of her in B with Old Town, Ellsworth, and you're thinking that those teams were going to be there in contention all throughout Dupre's tenure at Caribou. But you look up now, the injury bug at Ellsworth, Old Town a bit down. Maybe she does get a Class B crown to get to a state title game.
But there is one team, the MDI Trojans, that beat Caribou, are off to a great start. They got Lexi Tozier, reigning Big East Player of the Week. MDI, they will play next weekend. That's part of that doubleheader in the county. That's
calling that one
on Saturday.
You calling that game?
Nope, I will not be.
It's too bad. It's unfortunate.
I'll be in the Wildcat Nation that night.
Okay. Want to give the Herman Hawks some love, and also because it comes at the expense of your Presque Isle Wildcats. Herman beat Presque Isle girls 48-45. Brooke Gallup led the way for Herman, scoring 16 points to help them get the victory. Jan Curtis had a big game for Presque Isle with 19, but it's not enough. Presque Isle drops to 6-4. Herman improved to 5-5. Big win for the Herman Hawks, who just want to give some love to.
But I talked about him a little bit last week. The Gallup, and then you also have Becca Balmus on the inside. Cassidy LaBelle played really well against Presque Isle too. Madeline Tracy. They've got some nice pieces for Coach Muth. So Herman, not an easy team by any means. You look at the record 5-5, but I still think they are one of the top 6 or 7 teams in B North. Because you look at Caribou and MDI, probably the 2 best teams. Past that, anybody can beat anybody.
Yeah. Let's drop it on down to Class C, where I don't think anyone's
don't be so mean to my Wildcats either. Nora Curtis was out. All right, she didn't play. She's a starter.
It was more so giving Herman some love. That's what I was.
Okay, good. Right. Yeah. Kira Tompkins is back as well. Another junior for the Wildcats. That will help.
Okay. Let's drop it on down to C. Talk about a team that I don't see losing because they just been steamrolling everybody. That would be the PBHS Howlers, who improved to 10-0. After a 2-0 week last week. They beat Callis 81-19 on Saturday. Earlier in the week, they beat Stearns 74-22. As I mentioned, improved to 10-0. Average margin of victory around 46 points per game, allowing 24 points per game, which is lowest in the state. Balanced offensive scoring attack. Riley Moulton, 21 a game. Brooklyn Raymond, 19 a game. Ellie Austin, 11, almost 12 a game. Lila Cummings with 8 points per game. Just a deep, loaded roster who can score the ball and lock you down. Anything you want to add, Steve? I don't know. Those numbers are impressive right there.
46 points. That's wild.
No.
I said last week, I think put them at any level in the state. I think they can compete.
No.
They're that good.
Just got to get that gold ball. Get the gold ball now. To wrap things up in Class C, I just want to touch on my Fort Kent Warriors, and not just because they're my Fort Kent Warriors, but they're playing well. They improved to 8-1. They beat
also
Hodgson.
Because they're your Fort Kent Warriors.
Also because they're my Warriors. They improved to 8-1. They beat Hodgson 56-35. Let's see, Lily Oliver, who's been playing well all year long for my Warriors, led the way with 26. Lily Warrington added 11 in that one as well. They also had a win over Southern Aroostook, 56-47. That improved Fort Kent to 9-1 at that point. That was their latest one. I'm sorry. 29 points for Lily Oliver in that one. Alexa Hersey paved the way for Southern Aroostook with 8. So Fort Kent right there in the mix too. We talked about PVHS, but coming in right behind them, my Warriors.
Yep. And they play that 1-3-1 half court trap well as too. Lily Oliver puts up some big numbers. Lily Warrington can surely shoot the basketball. Ellie Roy can too. Emma Netto. Fort Kent is one of the top 4 teams in C. I have no doubts about that. So yeah, they're having another great season. Kelly O'Leary, Coach Netto.
Someone else. They've been consistent too.
Absolutely.
Coach Kelly. Yeah. That wraps up my big time games of the week, my big time performances of the week. We have a little bit of time here, Steve. You want to just go through some of these heel points, look at where some of these teams are at, and see if we can make any sense of some of this madness?
Let's go.
Where do you want to start with? I feel like on the boys, we went pretty much through them all except for D. Let me pull up Class D and see what we're looking at here. Skank, number 1 at 9-1. Katahdin, number 2. Bangor Christian, 3. Southern Aroostook hanging around there at number 4. And then we got Central Aroostook, Lee Academy, Easton, Jonesport rounding up the top 8. So your takeaways from D at this point, Steve? It seems like the favorites have kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack.
Yep, I picked Skank before the season. I feel no reason to step aside from that opinion. Katahdin, no surprise they're there. Bangor Christian, defending state champs, no surprise. The only one that I look at, like Central Rustic has, talk about a brutal week for the Panthers. And, I want to, they've lost 5 in a row. Easton by 10, Fort Kent by 8, Madawaska by 4 after the game tying shot by Quinn Pelletier. Hodgson by 3, which they had a lead in the fourth quarter, and then Lee Academy by 2, which they led in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's just been a heartbreaking loss after heartbreaking loss for the Panthers. And then they got to play Katahdin on the road, Fort Fairfield at home, and they end the season with Easton, Fort Kent, Southern Rustic, Hodgson. I mean, their schedule is brutal. I've brought that up numerous times. Still in 5th, so you see the 3-7 record. Don't let that fool you. They are much better than what their record indicates.
Okay.
Right? So I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not going to say they're going to win it all. They're a very young team with a first-year head coach in Griffin Jarrett. They will be just fine. They may not win it this year because, I think Skank is, to me, probably the best team, although you could probably say Katahdin is as well. They've split on the regular season. But I want to shout out the Panthers and make sure everybody knows that don't look at the 3-7 record and brush them aside and say, why are they 5th? They challenge themselves. They'll be ready come tournament time if they make it to the 4. So just watch out for the Panthers. They got one of the best players in the state.
They got a stud on that roster.
My nephew, Jaleel.
Nephew Jaleel.
That's right. Bangor Christian. So Lee Academy as well, 6-4. They just beat the Panthers, coached by Randy Harris. Easton with Chase Flewelling. The only team that kind of surprises me is Southern Rustic at 5-5. I didn't expect them to be there, but with Collier and Trafton Russell, they've proven me wrong, and Coach Russell, who does a terrific job in Dyer Brook. Shout out to him.
Every year.
Yep.
I feel like we talked pretty well in depth with Class C, so I want to jump up to B. Just take a look at that playoff picture. We talked about Caribou, we talked about Presque Isle, but just to run it down. So Caribou number 1, as we mentioned, 10-1. Ellsworth number 2 at 9-1. We got Winslow at number 3, team we haven't talked a lot about. Orno at 4. And then rounding up the top 8, Miranda Cook at 5, Presque Isle 6, Herman 7, Old Town 8. So your thoughts on B at this point, Steve?
Well, you look down. I mean, MDI, who is 13th, beat Presque Isle by 20-something. And they play next weekend. They beat Presque Isle. I was going to see if I could find the score. That's a lie. That's the wrong score on the MPA. It does not have the correct score. But MDI is a very good team. John Baps is solid as well with Isak Robichaud. WA at 3-6 and 16th with Clay Crossman, who's one of the best players in the Big East. I mean, as I've said all year, Big East is absolutely loaded.
Yeah.
But nothing really is super surprising to me. Caribou and Ellsworth, Winslow, Orno, Miranda Cook with Freeman and Fontaine, and they can score.
And you mentioned next weekend is that trip for the down east team. So Ellsworth heading up to play Caribou and Presque Isle next weekend.
Yeah, that's a weekend to watch. Especially those Ellsworth Caribou games. Is Caribou going to be a play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder? Because that is the one blemish on the record.
We shall see. Let's switch it on over to girls. Let's go to Class B North girls. Just take a look at that picture. We mentioned Caribou sitting at the top. If I can get this website to load for me here.
It's so annoying how the MP every time I click on Class B or varsity girls, and then it like resets.
Yeah.
Does it do that for you too?
Yeah, more often than not.
Annoying.
All right, there we go. They just reset again.
So good.
Here we go. All right, I'm in. All right, so we mentioned at the top, Caribou Vikings, number 1. MDI, number 2, who you mentioned, the only team to knock off Caribou this year. They're 7-2, sitting in second place. Erskine Academy, team we haven't talked about at all either, Steve. Number 3, Old Town 4, and then rounding at the top 8, we got Miranda Cook, Ellsworth, Presque Isle, and John Babb. So your thoughts? I know that you don't see Erskine Academy during the year. Don't see Miranda Cook at all. You see these Big East teams, but your thoughts on the B playoff picture?
Again, the only thing that surprises me is Ellsworth being 7-3, but you attribute that mostly to the fact that they are just riddled with injuries. MDI has surprised me with their improvement also to be in the 2 spot. Everybody thought Old Town would be down with Sage Evans departing and Michaela Emerson. Don't blame them for thinking that. They've proven us wrong. Coach Richard's doing a great job in Old Town. And John Bapps at 5-5. That's a dangerous 8 seed right there.
Yeah.
Very dangerous. So Herman at an 11th right now. I mean, Washington Academy, I think did they just beat John Bapps? I think. Yeah, 57-47. WA just beat Bapps. So Class B is a little wild.
All right. And then I feel like we talked about Class C girls pretty in depth as well. So I just want to drop down to D girls, give the Class D some love. So number 1, Skank at 8-2. Central Aroostook currently in 2nd. Bangor Christian 3. Wisdom number 4 at 8-1. And then rounding out the top 8, we got Shed, Southern Aroostook, Jonesport Beals, and Washburn. So your thoughts on Class D as we move past the halfway point in the season here?
Just want people to keep an eye on that team in 7th. Jonesport Beals. Just keep an eye out. They lost to Bangor Christian 48-31 on December 28th. They turn around a couple weeks later. They beat Bangor Christian 61-59. Mia Mills is an absolute bucket getter and one of the best players that you're going to watch. So just want everybody keep an eye on the Royals. Don't sleep on them.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. All right. Anything else? Any other takeaways? Anything else you want to hit on as we wrap up this episode of Northbound?
I want your thoughts, Tom. I want your thoughts on the flop technical warnings and the point of emphasis on the flop. Did you see any in the Brewer Hamden Academy game?
No flops in that game, which was another reason why I enjoyed it so much. But I did hear discussion during your game. I think there was a technical given. I think I missed the flop warning, and then I saw the technical given.
So Brescia got the initial flop warning, and then that is a team warning. So then Owen Corrigan got called. He didn't get called for the technical. Well, I guess he did in a roundabout way. He did, but it is a technical on the team.
Your thoughts? What are your thoughts? You seem pretty worked up about this. I want to hear what you think.
I just look at it as number 1, the block and charge call is the most difficult call to make already. As it is. I mean, some would argue it's pretty easy, some would argue it's not, but it just seems to be dependable on which official you have, how they look at the play. You're adding another variable to it, like looking for something else. You know, I think some officials do a better job than others, but I just call a block. Number 1, get the restricted area underneath the basket. That will prevent some, discretionary calls within the painted area. If that half circle's there and somebody's in the paint, it's a block. There's no doubt about it. That needs to be implemented ASAP, as soon as possible, before a shot clock is the restricted area inside the lane. And then if a player flops, just call a block. Yeah. Just too many times I see players get rewarded for a flop. I'm like, God, keepers. I could never do it to myself to flop. I just couldn't do it to myself when I played.
This has been Old Man Steve. We're still looking for a sponsor for this segment, Steve Bentz, now that he's getting old and things are bothering him. So if anyone interested in sponsoring this segment, reach out to me. But
do you like the flop warning?
No, I think it's dumb. Like you said, it should either just be.
Well, the thing is, it's not a new rule.
It's just an emphasis.
It's just a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
Then if it's a rule, just call it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just call block.
The typical dad in me, I don't do warnings.
Yeah.
Okay. You flop. There's your technical. Don't do it again.
Get it out of our game. We don't want that in our game.
Yeah.
So you mentioned tonight being your only night off. What are some games to look forward to this week, or what games are you on the call for this week?
I've got the Fort Kent Caribou girls and the Fort Kent Caribou boys on Tuesday, Wednesday, and I got Fort Fairfield Central Roostick doubleheader on Friday, and then Prescott Old Town girls and Prescott Orono boys on Saturday. Caribou will also be hosting Herman on Saturday. And I just want to make sure that on that rant I had, I'm not hammering on the officials.
No.
They're just there to enforce
they're doing their job. Yeah.
They're doing their job. That's not against them. It's the NFHS, which says, that can't have it 1-1 because of safety issues. Well, really?
Yeah.
Rarely have I ever seen somebody get injured. I've seen more players get injured trying to slide under somebody on a restricted area charge call. I've seen a lot more injuries that way than I have on a 1-on-1. Just saying.
Once again, this is Old Man Steve. The
All right.
segment. We're looking for sponsors for this segment. Anyone out there interested in sponsoring, just reach out to me and let me know. Steve, thanks for making time on your night off. I appreciate it. Of course. Man. We were supposed to go last night. We were both a little tired, but the fans wanted, so here we are. We're just grinding away.
I was watching the Eagles game anyways.
Yeah, so you had yourself a good little night, so it all worked out. So, for this week's episode, thank you to our sponsor one more time, Katahdin Trust, community banking at its best. For Steve and myself, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week with another episode of Northbound, the podcast. See you guys.